What's up, everybody? Welcome to the EDM podcast. Today, you are joined by me, first of all, your host, Aidan Russell, aka Artsy. And today we've got a very special guest in the studio. We've got Ville, aka Darude, who I'm sure if you're listening, you'll be very, very familiar with his iconic track, Sandstorm. But beyond Sandstorm, obviously, you've got a career spanning 3 decades and you've got a consistently evolving, I would probably describe progressive and uplifting take on house and trance, but it obviously spans a bit out from that as well. And you've had releases on labels like major labels like Warner, as well as others like Armada and Black Hole Recordings. So that's a little extensive, short overview. Welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And you talking about 3 decades, that makes me... You're dating me, dude.
I mean, in a encouraging, you've got a lot of production wisdom, so which we're gonna obviously dig into today, and I'm very excited.
Cool,
great, man. So we'll start off with a few, I guess, more background kind of questions before we dive into the production stuff. Like I said in the intro, you're obviously known for your hit track Sandstorm, which quite a few years now. Obviously, it was released back in 1999, I think it was originally.
Yeah,
is that correct?
In Finland, yeah, and 2000 sort of elsewhere.
Nice, yeah. Back when labels released it in certain territories, and then kind of went from there. And obviously, it kind of blew up, I guess, maybe 15 or so years later, would you say, after that? And then it kind of became quite popular again. And so it's kind of been a whole journey for you, I can imagine. But obviously, I'm sure there's plenty of interviews people listening can go check out where you've talked extensively about Sandstorm. But I kind of just want to let you give a bit of an overview as to what's been happening since then, and what's it been like the last 10 or so years for your career in music production and DJing and stuff.
Well, yeah, I started making music in like 95, 96, just because I realized a couple of my friends showed me that I could make music, because I wasn't a live player of any instrument. And so Sandstorm came about initially, some stuff like in 97, and then 99 I dug out that project and worked on that, and it became what it became. First my version, and then I got it finished with then and still a master producer here in Finland called JS16, Jaakko Salovaara, and it just blew up all of a sudden. We didn't have any idea, especially I didn't have any idea. I wasn't a DJ. I wasn't considering myself a pro musician or producer at that time, just a hobbyist noisemaker kind of. And so then all of a sudden, the next 2 years I was touring, like literally through Jaakko. I found a booking agent in Finland, and there was demand requests in Finland first, and then shortly after Scandinavia, Nordics, Germany, whatever, and then later on Australia, USA, everywhere else in Europe and whatnot. And like in 2002, I kind of woke up one morning home and, I have a 3-month break. Now I'm going to start working on my second album.
Nice.
And kind of like at that time, literally kind of almost like 2 years went by touring, me being like fresh out of nowhere near electronic dance music scene or DJ scene, just all of a sudden tossed into performing and the promotions and traveling, everything that goes with it. So it was quite a blur, and I just did stuff. I didn't kind of have time or maybe capacity to stop and think about what was going on. And then in 2002, we decided I'll take a break. And I was thinking the Sunday I came home from the last gig, Monday I'm going to hit the studio and work on my new stuff. And it took me 4 months or so until I actually got anything done in the studio. Like I sat there here and there, did some stuff, but just like, okay, yeah. It's not that I didn't want to, it's not that I didn't like it, but just I was so empty on everything. And the weird thing is that I didn't really like I didn't feel like I was burned out. I didn't feel like I didn't want to do anything like the touring and whatnot, but it was just so mentally and even physically full on that I was definitely tired. And so I took a good bit of time, but then we started working on the second album, 2002. It was released 2003, still with JS16. Released 2 singles of it, Music and Next to You, and then toured again extensively everywhere. And in 2006, I started working on an album, still brought demos to my buddy, JS16. But then at that time, his way of making music was it's a little more hands-on that I wanted to, and it was my third album, so I needed to have more control. And we just didn't see eye to eye on where the track should go. And the demos I brought in would be taken into way too small pieces, in my opinion, and then would have started developing from there, as I thought that I have almost like a full track, and then we'll just final produce it together and whatnot.
Right.
And so as buddies, we still parted ways. It was under his record company, and he sold the contract to another Finnish label called Helsinki Music Company. And then I produced a third album, labeled this myself. And then again, afterwards toured. There were 4 singles. There was Next, Tell Me My Game, and then Stars, which is a cover or reiteration of a Finnish song. And then kind of its sister song, I Ran, cover by the Flock of Seagulls. And actually in Finland and in Nordics, the album was released with the track called Stars as the third single, but in the US it was released as the same album, but with I Ran as the third single, because that's more known track, the Flock of Seagulls, hit from early 80s. Nice. And then toured extensively again after that, moved to US around 2007, 8, family reasons, and then we stayed there for about 6 years. And then in 2013, 14, I started working on my fourth album called Moments, and it was released in 15, and released a couple of singles on the album, toured extensively. And now I'm here. Since then, I've released a couple of tracks on Armada, Black Hole, Born Recordings in Australia.
Awesome.
I don't know if I can remember anything else right now. And I still feel like I'm making the same kind of electronic dance music I made in the beginning. I compose a little more. It's a little more purposeful, maybe.
Sure.
In a sense. And I work now more with vocals and wider variety of people around me and with me as well. As in the beginning, it was quite trial and error, like almost 100% of it. And a lot of programming drums, a lot of arpeggiator programming and trying out. And today, a little less of that, but I still like that stuff and I still incorporate it. But like I said, it's my production and writing, which kind of all, and engineering, which kind of all is one bundle often. But it's a little more purposeful, and I know these things that I'm stronger at and then less strong, and then I'll ask help if I don't know how to do something, or I know that I'm not top notch at it. And then also today I know to wear different hats in different phases of the thing. Like back in the day, I would just try and do everything at the same time. But now I have writing sessions, writing days or moments, and then I produce, and then I produce and mix at the same time, but then I do a final mixing round where I basically have committed to whatever is on the track, and then I don't mess up with the arrangement or production stuff anymore.
Totally. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I think a lot of producers reach this point, and I'm sure a lot of them are listening to this interview, like where, you know, you learn a few production skills, and then I think you kind of realize that really what's important at the end of the day is like the song itself, and like learning those songwriting skills, and, you know, whether it's working with vocalists or being more intentional and deliberate with melodies and chord progressions and stuff like that. I think is that kind of what you mean when you say it was a bit more purposeful? Like, is that the kind of stuff that you began to focus on more?
Well, I mean, honestly, in the beginning, I would grab one sound and start messing with it. And then that would take me all the way to the next step, and then it would be like Lego building blocks, or the 4-bar or 8-bar thing, and then I would build the song from there, like just based on vibes, like what comes next. It's not that I don't do that today as well. I try to keep it organic here and there, but there's more of this. Like then I just found melodies and I came across things, melodies and other stuff. Now I have like my phone full of stuff that I hear when I'm not in a studio. Like I hear an ambiance in the background, I record that and I hear a chord progression or something in it. So I try to catch the audio and the moment and the melody. Then I hum it. And there's more of these building blocks that I come across without noodling. And then also the production is more like there's a routine and there's these certain things that I tend to do that are I don't want to say calculative, but more mechanic, and just when you do them, you get to the next phase better or quicker without the trial and error stuff. So that's what I mean, where it's more. And then also like the composing thing is, I'm a little better with my keys these days, so I don't have to necessarily spend half an hour trying to find a simple melody that earlier would have taken me a lot of time, either playing one-fingered or just moving notes with my mouse and trying out like press, play, no, stop, play, move, So in that way, it's maybe a little more purposeful, or I don't know if that's the right word, but something.
No, that's very interesting. Yeah, I think it's definitely an important skill to focus on as a producer. Mm-hmm. Moving on back, like more, I guess, into the production side of things. So I was doing a bit of research before the episode, and I think you started out on an early version of Cubase. Is that correct?
Well, yes and no. I didn't start on Cubase, but I started actually my first ever, actually not a DAW, but sequencer then was, I tried Cakewalk in must have been 97 probably. But even before that, and then alongside that, I used a tracker program called Fast Tracker 2. And like certain original bits of Sandstorm, for instance, are done in Fast Tracker 2, then rendered out. Then later on, I put them in Cubase, for instance. Around 98, 99, I started using Cubase VST, the first version of the VST.
Yeah.
And basically, I was using SoundForge and Fast Tracker, and then a couple of standalone, like Hammerhead drum machine. I don't know if you know of it or if you remember it, but vaguely, it was, I think, 6-part drum machine that had a simple sequencer, 909 kind of style sequencer thing on it. So I would render these loops out of any and every similar, like, standalone thing. And like, for instance, the Fast Tracker 2, that was still running on DOS. Not even Windows, but so you'd render stuff out there, thinking parts, thinking drum loops and layers, and then I'd go take them in Cubase and started arranging and mixing there. And at the time, around that time, I had one synth, which is still here, my trusty Core TR rack.
Nice.
And that was one of those layers that I would use. You could use it either in like single sound mode, or multi-mode, or sequencer mode. And when you had it in sequencer mode, it was a 16-part multi-timbral.
Nice.
But then it sounded quite not so lush, and it was a little poor sounding because you would have to divide the effects that you'd have between, or decide which one would be dry and which one you'd have a little bit of reverb on it. Or you could use sends, but it was very limited like that. So often I would actually compose and produce stuff with the 16-part thing. Then when I'd had my MIDI down, and it would be kind of like a little, small sounding or whatever, then I would go and program all those sounds, but with their insert and master effects in a single mode. And then I'd, tweak the sounds how I wanted them, more reverb, more this and more that. And then I'd bounce out or record those as layers to Cubase and would mix them like that.
Wow.
But yeah, so Cubase was definitely... Cakewalk wasn't a DAW initially, when the first version I tried it, and then I think it had around that time it became actually the digital audio workstation, so it got like 8 tracks of audio.
Wow.
So that was my first audio editing experience, really. And then shortly after I went to Cubase, and a couple of first years up till 2002, when we started producing my second album, my producer JS16 then changed from an Atari ST based, more like the traditional electronic dance music system, to an Apple based system, and Logic. So I started working in Logic with him at that point. It was just easier, and we both kind of, when we produced my second album, we both kind of learned Logic doing that. So I've been on Logic since.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to say, do you much prefer being on Logic now? Because obviously technology's evolved so much since then, and it's a lot more flexible. Do you feel like you missed any of the older workflows? I mean, obviously you still have some of those synths, but do you feel like there's any advantages to having? Because I think everyone obviously knows modern DAWs are better in a lot of ways. They're faster and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm curious.
I actually know exactly what you mean, and it applies to my case, but not so much me. And I'll explain. JS16 had 2 ASR10 samplers. He had a Nordly 2 that I have here. He had JP8080 Roland that I have here as well. And then he had a real 909. And he was a wizard with the ASR 10 samplers. And what those had was a couple of dials and a fader that you could use to do various things, but mainly, finding sample starts and ends and whatnot. Yeah. So when we had to slice up a loop, for instance, he would throw in a drum loop, then he would just slice it up, and it's basically only hearing. You just find starting point of the sample, tweak the sample start, and that's your slice. And that's how it just worked. I actually never worked like that. Like, I had a couple of hardware samplers, particularly EMU ESI 4000, I think, with the turbo kit. We're whopping, I don't know, maybe 16 megs of RAM, or whatever it was, just something ridiculous. But I never liked hardware sampler. That one was really hard for me to wrap my head around. And I basically used the EMU CDs that came with it and were just directly, pre-made instruments. Sampling was difficult to grasp for me then. But so then Logic came, and Logic's EXS24, and I noticed that Jaakko, who was very much into the traditional way of sampling, so he would have vinyl, he would have CDs, he would have sample packs, and back then sample packs were actually just audio on CDs, not even files, but audio. Wow. So he would routinely, throughout all the sessions, sample stuff in to the ASR samplers. But when he went to the Logic workflow, he still, for the longest time, first of all, used the ASR 10s. And I didn't understand it because EXS24 on the big screen was so much more convenient, in my opinion. Yeah. But it was his workflow of sampling stuff in. Yeah. And the immediacy of that thing, like having whatever you sample, it's right on the middle C. Whatever you do, it's right there. And or you obviously spread it on a keyboard and make a playable instrument out of it. But so just a couple of years ago, whatever Logic version it was, they actually brought back direct sampling to the sampler. And it's an interesting thing because obviously all these years since then, you could have recorded something on a track in Logic, then edit it there and drop it in sampler. Yeah. But it is not as immediate because you see it as a track recording first, and then you need to go in, and even when the visual editing is so much more accurate and in a way easier. But somebody like Jaakko, for instance, there's the muscle memory with the hardware sampling is such a big thing of the workflow. So he did not kind of get it. But don't get me wrong, he's a master producer and samplist and editor and whatnot, so he can do it, but just the workflow was kind of disrupted. And it's interesting, I haven't spoken to him in a while now, but it would be interesting to know if he's actually gone back to sampling now straight to the sampler in Logic, because that is now possible.
Totally. Yeah, it's very interesting. Like, there's definitely pros and cons to both, the hardware and software thing.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, like predominantly now I've watched through a few of your production breakdowns and stuff on your YouTube channel, which are amazing, by the way. Really, if you guys are listening and haven't checked those out, go check out the Darude YouTube channel for some juicy tips. But I guess, like, to contrast what we were just talking about, what's your favorite part now about like working in a modern DAW and what's just, your standard kind of like workflow with using Logic?
So I've been in the box literally almost all my life, like all my production life, because I started with the Fast Tracker, which was like very rudimentary sampler DAW-ish thing. A lot of people, if they see it today, if they would see it first time today, would be baffled.
Yeah,
it was very like and then what do you call the number system? Like the hexadecimal? Yeah, like that. I mean, it when you get it and it's 8s or 16s and whatnot, it is kind of makes sense, and it's divided into 4s and whatnot. But it took me a little while back then to figure it out. But anyway, so I did have the Korg Trinity rack. I've had Triton, couple of those, Triton rack and a keyboard. I don't know if you can see in the background, there's on top of that shelf, there's...
Oh, yep.
And I had Korg Karma. I like that as well, but it has the same engine as the Triton has.
Okay.
Like I said, Nordrack 2, that actually is quite a recent buy. I found that second or third or 10th hand somewhere.
Nice.
And then the JP8080 Roland, that's the original trance machine that we used a lot. Yeah. Both of those we used a lot on my first album, second one as well. And then I have MS-2000 under there as well.
Oh, yeah, awesome.
And those, so I'm kind of like a Korg guy. I don't know why.
Yeah.
JS, Jaakko had a Roland 2080, the JV, with, that's kind of the classics, multi-genre, multi-sound, everything's in it machine, from where we used certain bass sounds. And for instance, little tidbit, we never really used the real 909 snare. He had a real 909, but we used a snare from the JV 2080 because it just sounds better for some reason. It sounds like snappier.
The 12-bit kind of crushing, is that kind of adds a bit of, is that what it does to it? I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know, maybe, but if you take a real 909, the kick usually is good always. You can just, tweak that, but often the snares, for instance, are weak. You need to process, you need to, take them out on their own and then put them through compression and EQ to make them sound good, for instance.
I always clip mine a bit just to give it that crunch and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just found that the snare, we couldn't find the right tone, the right snap, whatever. Yeah. And it's just funny that we had a real 909 there, and then we used the one that Roland sampled themselves to, or in the JV box. But so I was in the box for the longest time as soon as I could, because I found it cumbersome to record my Triton, for instance, track by track by track. And then traveling and working was cumbersome because early 2000s, you had EXS24 at some point, and then you had the ES1 and ESM and whatnot, the Logic's own stock synths, but they were not that much at that point yet. And then the moment Nexus came out, that kind of replaced my Triton as the multi-genre, multi sound box.
Yeah.
And a couple of others like Vanguard was kind of, it sounded kind of metallic and crappy, but it still was replacing a virus that I had back in the day, and also sort of the Nordrak and the JP8080. So I like the convenience of in the box so much. I like the total recall of everything. You can go back versions and this and that. And then I can just take my laptop and work with that everywhere. So that's, but now the last couple of years, I've actually gone back to, I've made myself go back to sort of hardware workflow as well, because I like the commitment aspect of it.
Yes.
I like the idea of forcing myself at some point to think like, okay, now I'm going to make it audio. And even though I can save the MIDI, I can save every setting, whatever, but it just still makes me think differently about, now I have the audio here. And the only thing that makes that then a little more, inconvenient is that every time I finish a project, then I know that tomorrow, next week, I need to go or not finish, but finish working on a project that time. I need to go on the road and I want to work on it. So then I need to do a round of bouncing of all the audio that I need. But it's not usually that much. Maybe the Nord lead, maybe the JP. And then on his side, I don't know if these keys here are, it's a Moog Sub 37.
Amazing. Yeah.
And that's been in good use as well here. And hold on, you might not see it. I have a Synth Pro by IK Multimedia.
Yes, yeah. I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's an amazing little analog synth, by the way. So it's paraphonic analog one, and there's a desktop version that I have, and then there's a keys version. Exactly the same engine, exactly same everything, but this has these like capacitive play or toy keys, which you can play, but it's not as, it's not the same as keys. But so it's analog, but it has digital effects, which makes it quite interesting, and the delays are cool, and there's all kinds of modulation and whatnot. But so what's now in common with all of these synths is, and why I brought them back to my workflow as outboard gear, is that the Moog has an amazing plugin that is both librarian and also works with Logic, so you can automate everything on the front panel. So that's just incredibly amazing. Analog sound with all the fatness and all the quirks that it might have. The filter's amazing, but it has a big knob that I can turn, the tactileness of that. But then I can save everything on the laptop or on in Logic via the plugin. Like that's been mind-blowingly amazing for me. And now there's at least this company that I know. It's actually a Finnish company called Mystery Islands, or now they changed to Aura.
Okay.
That does plugins for the Nordrak, the JP, or MS2000 as well. And then there's like a lot of other plugins that they've done the same thing. So they have a digital plugin that looks like the actual synth and acts the same as basically what the Moog plugin does. So
awesome.
It connects it MIDI wise, it connects it audio wise. You select the correct inputs and outputs, and then you can tweak it on screen and automate everything. And it also acts as a librarian. So
wow.
So that makes that kind of stuff so much easier. Patches are saved within Logic.
Yeah.
And all the settings. And so that's why I now have kind of fallen back in love with outboard gear as well.
Nice. That's good. Kind of like the virus, right? How you can do the similar thing with saving the presets.
Yes.
And whatnot. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that you touched on something really good there as well. Like for producers listening, like if you want to commit to something, just bounce to audio. I think that's like a great takeaway here, because it kind of just forces you to, not get too caught up in the details and all that kind of thing. So it's very, very good call.
For me, I'm I'm at least as much a nerd as I'm a musician, or
Yeah.
like tinker, tweaker, trier, outer. And the thing about that is that I have to remind and almost like force myself to snap out of it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and like get to it, meaning to it being sort of actual productive work, if you will. And then I'm better at it these days because I've sort of made myself do these days where in the morning I say, today I'm not going to produce. Today's mess around with samples day or go through presets day.
Yeah.
And when I do that, I almost always find something that I like.
Yes.
I make an initial melody bit, but then I have to stop myself. So what obviously is great in Logic, any DAW these days they have, you can save like that you can save the whole patch if you made a multi-layer thing, or that you can obviously. What I do is I'm paranoid. I actually save the MIDI separately. I name it exactly what I named my patches.
Yeah.
If it's multi-layered, or if it's just a synth, I name it with the synth name and the patch name, and I save it elsewhere. But then Logic has these Apple loops or whatever that you're calling. You can basically drag and drop a MIDI region to the loops, and it takes the patch and creates something that you can just next time drag and drop from there to another arrangement, and it pulls up the same patch, everything, and the same MIDI, and then it works exactly like you did it earlier. So similarly in Ableton, you can do like the full, basically you can save clips and with every setting there is to it. So it's kind of that kind of thing. And also Logic has this channel strip saving separately, and the patch saving. So you can save like different layers of stuff that you do. So when I'm doing my noodling days, I come across a good thing, I have to stop myself because I wouldn't mess with that endlessly.
Yeah.
Got a good enough idea, good enough vibe, save it, next preset, next sample, whatever, and mess around with it. Just so decidedly so won't write or produce that day. But so then you end up with 5 or 50 pieces of ammo for your further, next productions, or the track that you're working on now, but refuse to work on it because you have a noodling day.
Yes.
So that's helped me a lot, because then when I work on some production, I want to go like off to some tangent, but then I kind of remind myself, but hey, yesterday was a tangent day all day. So now I'm, working on this. And
the tangents are easy to go off on.
And those kind of things are like my internal things that kind of try to steer me being focused on the task at hand. And definitely when I'm in a writing phase, I'm way more lax. I don't care, and I do a take and a take and a take and a take, like so many takes, and I mess up my playing, but I just do takes, and my arrangement is horrible, messy.
Yeah.
And when I look at it in the next session, it feels bad. I hate a messy arrangement.
Sure.
But so when I'm in that creative mode, I let myself be messy. And then so on the production side, I name everything, I color code everything, I do neat arrangements. Sometimes I almost want to change some sounds if the arrangement looks messy, meaning just so I can make it look clean. I'm a little OCD or particular about that. And then when I get the production done, I need to at some point find now it's good enough, or now it's done enough, or whatever. And then I do stem bounces, kick is always alone, but then like loop drums, I've grouped together, then single hit drums like certain hi-hats and whatnot are together. If there's percussion, tone percussion, that adds up, that's one. And then there's 1 or 2 layers of bass, 1 or 2 layers of synths, effects are on one, and then depends on what the vocal's like. I might have just one vocal, bass or stem, or I might separate the lead and the background vocals. And so my stem mixing project is the one where I'm totally not producing anymore. Then it's just like getting the final mix right. I'm working usually between 4, but usually more 6 to 10 stems maybe.
Nice.
Stereo stems, and then at that point I'll still go through them. I might EQ and compress stems. I might clip, some drums or something like that. And then I'll do a master. And then on that thing, that project, I also have like a master comparison. Couple of buses where I can easily go just like alt solo, either my whatever I'm mastering or mixing mastering, and then I'll solo a commercial equivalent or one of my old tracks or whatnot. But so the wearing different hats that's been a big thing for me, and it took me a long time, maybe like the last 10 years I've been doing that.
Wow.
It's like very specifically. Until that, it was just like do everything on one go, and it was, I think, needed to be done. I'm not I don't think I'm a very spiritual or whatever kind of guy, but I do think that there's this development or arc that you need to go through to get somewhere. And then once you're there, like, okay, well, I wish maybe that would have been a little shorter, so I would have gotten here earlier, but there was a reason why you did it that way, or it took that much time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I definitely think that there's benefit, especially with the like final mix. Yeah, just bouncing it out into stems and allowing yourself to just not. Yeah, again, it's the whole commitment thing. Just like not being able to. I mean, you can go back still. Obviously, it's a separate project and whatnot. But yeah, I've definitely always been one to mix in my projects themselves. But I've been lately trying to bounce out stems, and it just, it's kind of nice to decide it moves you towards that finished result, right? Like it moves you towards that thing closer. So
it does.
It's good. I was going to ask though sorry, you going to say something else?
No. I was going to say like one more thing that I do with my stem projects. Like, so most of the time I make my dance music still thinking about the extended mix. So I might not start with beats. I might have a melodic idea first, but I put the melodic idea is going to be at, I don't know, 2.5 or 3 minute mark, so that there's room for the intro. So anyway, in my main project, I usually make the 4 to 7 minute track, the extended mix first. I bounce the stems out of those. And then when I go to the stem mix project, I cut the radio or Spotify or whatever you want to call it, edit there off the main things, because now I have the 6 to 8 stems, and there's some leeway. You can kind of play, you could select sweeps from the effects that actually fit. You can edit those together. And usually there's, from the extended mix, there's like, that has usually maybe like one more round of chorus or drop. There's maybe longer break down and build up. And so but I can, I don't know, hate is a strong word, but I hate doing radio edits of my extended ones. Because those are like crafted with the vibe, and it progresses this and that. And all of a sudden you need to kind of just like butcher it. But here's a tip for everyone who hates it like I do. Since I made, several years ago, since I made it this butchering contest for myself, like how short can I make it? Like that's a challenge. So now it's sort of like it's not a positive thing, but now I'm not thinking like, oh, I'm ruining it. But now I'm thinking like, how bad can I butcher it?
Sure.
And so now when I get to, I have a 7 minute track and I get to 2:45, it's quite butchered. But then I've started thinking that there's a skill to that as well. So now the shorter I can, not the shorter, of course I could just cut it to like 30 seconds, but the shorter I can make it with some kind of flow and some kind of, preserving the actual track still, the better it is. And then the better I feel about myself. So if you look at it from the other angle, like, oh, it's sad, I need to cut it. No, but let me butcher it. Let me see how badly I can do that. So it's good.
It's a great outlook. Let's see how bad I can butcher my own track. That's so interesting.
Exactly.
Have you ever tried like making the I guess radio or Spotify version from scratch, or is it always from that extended mix?
Yeah, I have, absolutely. And a lot of times today when you work with singer-songwriters or writing teams and whatnot, that's the thing you get. Basically, you get the they automatically write, some pads, some piano things, intro, a little bit of drums coming in. So you have your verse, you have your pre, you have your chorus. Then it's very formulaic when you work with it's like a modern writer, and there's nothing wrong with it. The only thing that it does for me is that if I'm at the session myself, and if I'm contributing to that, I do get married with the formula. And then we're directly making a radio edit.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. But as a dance music producer who wants to play my stuff at clubs, it's very easily afterwards when I make the extended one, it's just kind of like a minute on each end. Yeah. And you somehow just like try to make it sort of smooth that it's just there. And then you have a 4-minute extended, and it feels weird. It doesn't feel great to play it out maybe, or something like that. Because there's a mental aspect to being a club producer first and whatnot. So then often I have to kind of let the track sit a little bit, take a step back, and then think of it a little bit more like a remix kind of thing, where the writing, the melodies, chords, everything is in the back of my head, but I'll actually forget the session that it was made in. And then I actually produce beats and bass lines and, the intro first. And then I imagine how I would bring a vocal into that so that it doesn't start from the thinking of the edit.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's a tough balance or tough art, but there is definitely merit if you can do it correctly. So, and it seems like you're doing a good job. So kudos to you.
Well, I don't know about that. I hope so. But the thing is that what dictates, well, so like I said, there's nothing wrong about the edits. And then there's nothing wrong about adding the intro bits, for DJs to mix in. Yeah. But as a DJ myself, when I do play those tracks that are the 4.5 minute things with a minute of intro, sometimes 30 seconds of intro beats, it's so quick to mix in, and it's so abrupt to go straight to where the radio edit starts. Yeah. It's like you have a little bit of beat going, and it stops there, and then there's the commercial verse and chorus starts. It doesn't build like a club track for me should build. So that's where the difficulty comes, because you get used to the edit and you get used to the commercial formula, and you were part of the project, the writing, so it's a good record. That's not the point, but it feels wrong in a club context, and it's hard to make it then a club track as is. But I've found out that if you think about it not as your track, but as you're making a remix, then it becomes all of a sudden maybe quite a lot easier.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. No, it's an interesting deep dive into how you do that. Because like for example, I've just tried making it all one track, but there's definitely merit to making the extended version, then tapering it down. I've seen a lot of people do it that way. So no, I appreciate you diving into that.
But that's also like that's very much I guess maybe a traditional, like more like an old school way of making music.
Sure.
And I think it stems from people like me who were not necessarily seasoned live musicians,
Yeah.
but they were more programmers. We used drum machines, or we used drum machine like programming to create the beats, and then we're just like continuously listening to that loop and what adds next, what comes next, and that automatically kind of creates the 2-minute intro. And it's a different mindset. You're listening to way before vocals, way before melodies and chords even. You're listening to like what's in the rhythms and in the groove.
Yeah.
And then you bring the melodic elements. Like there are many tracks that I've started so that the bass line has been just a rhythm and a monotonous note.
Yeah.
And then later on I start humming, whistling, or like I remember, hey, last week I did this chord progression. Can I transpose so that the first chord is the root note of whatever bass line I have now? And then when I do, then I start transposing the bass line so that it corresponds with the chords that I did earlier. So it's kind of like just this trial and error, mix and match. And like I said, now if you do the radio edit session, the so to say hit formula song session, then that determines everything. But then you kind of have to work backwards to get to the club DJ producer feeling of it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Nah, it's good, man. Good information for those producers who are listening. I wanted to ask while we're on the topic as well, like of what plugins. Have to ask this question because it's just so interesting. What plugins are you a big fan of these days?
So it wouldn't be me if I didn't give you a longer answer, because one of my best Logic features, and I know other DAWs have this as well, and I highly recommend checking into this kind of thinking, is the plugin manager. Yeah. The plugin manager in Logic has a possibility to create folders. So when you go to find a plugin for your instrument or audio effect, you can sort them so that your favorite synths, favorite EQs, favorite whatever are on top, and then the rest of them are down there. Do yourself a favor. For me, synths are not an issue. I have a lot of synths, and maybe half of them are like my secondary synth folder, but I have a lot of synths. But EQs, compressors, for instance, are something that I have a lot of them too. But in my favorite folder, I have Logic's own EQ. I use that on almost every track as basic stuff. That's great for that. Then I have Pro Q3 from FabFilter. And that's my second one. And that's basically it. Then I do have, like, there's a couple of Waves vintage ones, or like clone ones. And then Logic has his own like vintage models as well. If I need like sort of traditional sound, like roundness or whatever, then I use those. But literally 2 EQs, because in my opinion, you can have 18 of them and you can select between them and spend time on that. But I think you get very similar results with the regular EQ tasks. You do little notches, you do little bumps, whatever, and almost all digital EQs sound about the same. And then when we get to the air department, or like LA something, compressors and EQs that are of the vintage sort of color, then that's different, because then you're looking for color and stuff, and not the finding ringing frequencies and whatnot. Yeah, totally. And the same with compressors. I have like Logic's own. I think I have an Isotope one. Yeah. And a Waves one. And just, I don't want to. There's tons that I have. Like, I have all the Waves plugins. I'm a Waves artist, and they have incredible plugins. But I think I just had to reinstall. And the least amount that I now have, because I took out some older versions, I think I had 608 Waves plugins. Wow, yeah, they got a lot. That spans everything, but I mean, there's so many of, the compression and EQ side, for instance. Yeah. So I've just cut out the excess, and then so I like a lot of Wave stuff. I've used waves a long time. I still use like L2 limiter in tracks on my tracks in my projects. It's just a simple works. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what limiter does for me. I do a lot of like reverb swells or drownouts with waves. Hold on, it's R verb.
Yeah.
Just because it has a dry wet control. I like not a separate wet and dry, but dry wet. Yes. I use that.
Nice.
And so, you know, whatever, towards a build-up, I'll drown something out. I might, you know, add a longer release time on a synth, and then on top of that, I add reverb on it, make it wetter, and that works really well for me, awesome. Just for some reason. And then I use a good bit of isotope stuff these days as well.
Yeah.
And their Ozone obviously has like a mastering suite, but there's the Ozone Imager on its own on separate tracks.
It's great. Yeah.
That's one of my go-tos. Their vocal synth is pretty damn nice. And then as a comparison, Waves' Ovox, they're not like the same, but I think of them as very similar. I love them both. They have different sort of things that I tend to do with them. But for instance, I made a Gabriel and Dresden remix that was instrumental initially, the track, but I made vocals on it. It's just, I don't know, it was kind of a piss take. And then they released it, or Anjuna Beats did. And those vocals are mine through Melodyne and Autotune and Waves, the Ovox and Isotope vocal synth, and then also Manipulator by...
the Infected Mushroom one?
Yeah, Infected Mushrooms guys, whatever the company's called.
Polyverse, I think, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's like layers of those, and I like those all for like just vocal mangling. Which nobody would like to hear my own actual dry voice anyways.
Yeah.
But so then what else is there? Big one, Shaper Box by Cable Guys. I swear by that plugin. It is, and it's like now it has like 9 modules of the, you know, in addition to a volume shaper, there's the filter shaper, there's you know, width pan, there's the crush, noise, all kinds of stuff. It's amazing. And now one of my favorite features they just came up with that is just the oscilloscope. Yeah. Like I've used on my master channel, I've used volume shaper, I don't know, multiple years as just a waveform display. Like it does nothing. It's basically wet, dry is 0. And I've just used the oscilloscope. And I've been asking them for years, like, how about you make a separate plugin? But well, they didn't make a separate plugin, but now you can just use the oscilloscope module and it saves all the settings exactly how you want it. You can zoom in, zoom out. You can do left channel, right channel, all kinds of stuff. And that's just, I like seeing my waveform when I need it. It's visual mixing sometimes is that you shouldn't just trust that, but there's a certain way a waveform, in my opinion, should look like. Yeah. And also, like when you're doing kick and bass balance, for instance, it's really good to know that when your kick envelope goes down, you're not mixing in bass if you're sidechain ducking a bass too early, but the kick should be down enough when the bass comes in, so that there's mixing wise there's space enough for both of them, but also that you can get away with or you won't get phase issues like that when the sort of big low end stuff is time wise separated as well.
Yeah, no, that's really good to see.
Yeah. So, and now with their latest version, they also got the audio triggering, so you can have a non-4/4 kick pattern, and it triggers the envelope. Yes. With the sidechain signal, which now is pretty amazing as well. So you can make your bass or pads or whatever pump according to non-4/4 kick. Yeah. Which is now really nice. So
is that what
you actually?
Is that
Yes,
what encouraged you to do the remix of 12 as a D&B remix?
Not really, but I mean, actually, Shaperbox is a big part of that as well.
Nice.
But well, so if you watch that video, it was quite the interesting project because it was a 6/8 track, and it was 128 like that, and so I cut every bar, lost 2 beats, so now I have 4/4, but now it's 192 ppm. And so I just basically with time stretching slowed it down to 170, and then that's a drum and bass BPM, and that's basically why I made drum and bass, because it just turned out like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a drum and bass producer myself, so I had to bring that up. That was a nice remix.
Look, I don't know. I'm not an expert in drum and bass. Like, I made drum and bass earlier, like, literally in the beginning. I made happy hardcore, drum and bass. Those were all kind of related, like 180, 170 BPM stuff, broken beats or straight hardcore kicks and whatever.
Yeah.
But it took me a good while to get close enough to sort of some references that I had, that I dared to publicly play this new one. Well, 2 years ago now, because I mean, there are such good drum and bass producers around that it definitely, there was a little bit of a threshold for me to dare to put it out or play it to other people. But when I did Dave Dresden, loved it. He was so happy about it. And then like, literally, honestly, to my surprise, Anjuna Beats wanted to release it, and I was of course fine with it. And it was also funny because I got questions like, what the Darude releasing 170 BPM drum and bass? Well, like, what's this? But
that's good,
it was
man.
funny.
That's good, man. Want to kind of switch gears for a bit and talk about, as we start to wrap up, talk about, first of all, your recent Australia-New Zealand tour, which obviously is my neck of the woods. I'm here in Melbourne, and I think you played in Northcote, was it in Melbourne, when you were here, I think?
I played in... well, not in Melbourne, but Geelong. Oh yeah,
Geelong. Yep.
And then I played the Welcome to Thornbury.
Oh yep, yeah, that's the same area.
That was New Year's Day.
Nice.
And Geelong was 26th maybe.
Nice.
Of December. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Now, how did you find the tour though?
My tour was amazing as always. We had, I'm not going to say which, but one gig was a little, it wasn't packed. It wasn't, there were people there, but it wasn't packed. But other gigs, so 8 out of 10 had really good packed crowds, and I had great vibes. Even the one that was a little thinner was great vibe-wise. And unfortunately, I had to cancel one gig because I got sick. Right when we got to Australia. I played my gig in Darwin. That was the first one, but then the second one in Adelaide, I had to skip because I had a little bit of fever and was not feeling so great. Yeah. But luckily, that was short, and then I got to do the rest of them. And I don't know if you believe me, but if you look at my last few years of touring, I've been in Australia once or twice a year, minus COVID.
Yeah.
And I've been doing actually quite extensive tours too. Like, now it was 10 dates, but 2017, I think I did 21 days, and I think I had 17 gigs all over Australia in that stretch, for instance. I love coming to Australia because people are willing and able to party. Somehow I find Aussies very open-minded in the sense that you could have a festival stage with like drum and bass, house, pop, trance, like kind of like whatever order. And it's not 100% crowd change, but there's just maybe 50% or 75% stay, and everybody's just having a good time. And I've always loved that about Australia.
Yeah.
And people are just generally friendly. I haven't had any sort of issues, and on the contrary, just made a lot of friends and found colleagues to work with and so on. So it's been great.
Glad we were hospitable towards you.
Yeah. And you're in Melbourne, so I last time I was there, not this time, but I'm a skateboarder, and I went to St. Kilda skate park, which was fucking amazing.
Oh yeah.
And then what's that ramp something? There's an indoor skate park.
Oh yeah. Is it Ramp Attack or something? I can't remember. I think I know the one.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Ramp Attack or Ramp Fest or something like that. It's actually, there were a lot of BMX riders there, but they have a really nice pool for skating as well. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely a big scene for that here. Oh, good, man. No, glad you enjoyed. And obviously, in other recent happenings, you've got, as of this podcast coming out, you will have had your new track dropped on the 20th, which is Outlaws.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that one?
Sorry, I have to correct you. I don't think it's going to come out on the 20th. We've had a little bit of delay, but it is coming out one of these weeks right now. We're still waiting for final music video, and there's a couple of other technical things, but it is coming out.
Yeah.
I've actually had an airplay in Finland on in our national radio already, and so it's there. And anybody who was at my gigs in Australia and New Zealand, they heard it. I've already been playing it. Yeah, it's called Outlaws, and it's with my buddy House Buddy and Oscar, and they're both Finns. And I started to track with House Buddy, and his name is Jaakko, but he's Jaakko Manninen and not JS16. Another Jaakko. He lives in LA, and I hung out with him in 2019 June, and we just were wondering, like, what would we want to listen to right now if we went out to party, to like a rave. And we're both family man, we work a lot, and I mean, I play out a lot, but I don't go out and party that much. So we were kind of looking at it from that angle, and so we came up with these. I had some loops on my computer. I had like a big synth pad, like kind of anthemic thing there. He was thinking like retro sound, so we actually had the XS24 instrument with 909 samples. We put that through like distortion and compression and compressed it to shit, kind of like old school way of doing 909s, but everything through the same bus, which was a nightmare to mix later on. But then we found like these Detroit, Chicago techno house stabs.
Yes.
And it was kind of messing about up until one point. Like, wow, actually we have a track here. And he's running Logic as well, so he was working the machine. I was airdropping him samples that I like, blah blah blah. He just put them in, and then we programmed sort of the 909s together, and then I took it home. It was an instrumental for almost 2 years until in 2021 summer I met this guy Oscar, who is a Finnish singer. He's kind of known, a producer and a singer-songwriter, and sort of starting up his career. And I saw him on this TV program. Oh, actually, he took part in the Eurovision Song Contest, the Finnish, like semifinals. He didn't get to go to the actual Eurovision, but I heard him sing live there, and I was like blown away. I sent him our idea. I told him the premise of like old gang together again, going out to party, rave, this and that. And he came out with the vocal, and I literally cried in my studio hearing it. He nailed it.
Wow.
He got the vibe. And then sort of for the breakdown, I don't want to say too much of references, but I can tell this though. We were thinking sort of like marry the rave and dirty house beats and whatnot with like Avicii-esque breakdown. So that's like very melodic, and then a vocal on top of that. And I think we succeeded. We nailed that. And
awesome.
I want the track to make bazillions for us, but I can honestly say that up until point it's been one good vibes session and outcome after another. And now we have a really funny music video as well, which actually Jaakko made. He's a video producer as well.
Nice.
And so it's been a success for me already without being even sort of released, because it's kind of tugged my heartstrings so many times already. So that's cool.
Awesome.
And we just waiting for the last final bits, and then we're going to get it out. And then it's going to be out on my new label called Vibing Out.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, what can you tell us about Vibing Out?
So I've been streaming since 2015. I've done these producer things on Twitch. I've actually given hints and tips and whatever, and Q&A stuff, but I've also produced a lot of music. And then but that was kind of random. Whenever I had a chance, sometimes there were a couple of months gaps and whatnot. Now, unfortunately, COVID started in 2020, but now looking back, there are silver linings like this. I started DJing every Friday at 6 p.m. my time, and I called those sessions Vibing Out.
Yeah.
I also did production streams, and I did like a Q&A or talk chat stream where I would not interview, but chat with my colleagues, producer peers and whatnot. For like a half a year, I did those 3 streams, Monday, Wednesday, and then Friday, the DJ stream. But then I didn't just have time to do all of that. So I've kept on the Vibing Out Friday stream, and the community that's built, the heartache and brain fuck that's saved me from and helped me with has been just enormous. Like that community we've normally have 400 to 500 people. We've had 1,000 people. We've had actually like 10,000 people when it just accidentally ends up on like Twitch front page or whatever. But there's such a community, and it's become stronger and stronger that I want to use the name and sort of the platform and the branding and develop that to the label. And I don't know if it means anything to those people. Well, for some, I know it does, but honestly, that Vibing Out stream, me being able to express myself as a DJ and an artist while everything was closed, and apparently it's helped other people as well, because they've been able to listen to me and forget their worries for a second and whatnot. But that's basically spawned the idea to call my label Vibing Out and see where I can develop that. Initially, first few releases are going to be mine, but we're going to also be releasing other people's music. Awesome. I get demos all the time, and people approach me about that kind of stuff. So we'll start doing that as well.
Oh, amazing. Well, no, looking forward to seeing what you do with all of the label and with the new releases. Very exciting times, I can imagine, for you.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, I actually have one question here from, his name's Simon. He's actually a writer on our blog, but I asked our Discord students if they had any questions for you before we recorded the interview. And he asked, is there one question that you're sick of being asked by people?
Not really. Like it's like I referred in the beginning already. Like I do get a lot of Sandstorm questions, both technically about the production, and none of that is. It's always kind of relevant, because that is my biggest, track that I put out, and that time, in a sense, I was at my most relevant as an artist and touring artist, and what I had then, like a hit record. So those are all sort of free game. But then there's, for instance, every winter, that's not a question, but every winter, if there's some kind of post by us where we reference to Sandstorm or we comment on Sandstorm, somebody used Sandstorm somewhere, there's always the wise guy who is saying, hey, why did you make a snowstorm? They have a brilliant idea, make a snowstorm. And I'm just like, dude, I haven't heard that for the last 23 years. Or I haven't thought of that myself. And I find these kind of things are funny, because they're just like, there are certain things about or certain comments that are just, people think that they're so clever.
Yeah.
And they're like the millionth person saying that, and they think that they are being funny and clever the first time.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, one thing that I don't have an answer to is some people ask about money pretty directly, like how much you've made and blah blah. Are you a billionaire? Blah blah. And I could say that my standard answer there is like, I don't talk about my money stuff with strangers, obviously, but you know, I live in a nice house. I have a studio, but I'm still paying my mortgage like everybody else, you know, like normal people. So it's not like I'm swimming in money here.
Yeah.
And I couldn't retire just, you know, based on say Sandstorm's royalties or whatnot.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm in my sort of dream setup here in my studio, and I would probably be making music with a lesser setup and without getting money out of it, because that's not what I started this for. So
sure.
So in general, people's sort of directness and bluntness and nosiness is sometimes irritating, because if you talk to somebody face to face somewhere with your own names and identities, you wouldn't like blurt out a question very detailed something, or people sometimes in my streams, my hair is messed up or whatever. That's why I'm wearing a hat today, by the way. People can be very direct and rude about that kind of stuff. And that's not what I like about the online culture of today. People are just so very quick and direct, and often behind an alias or avatar or whatever. So that makes them think that they can do it.
Yeah, it's definitely a negative aspect of that. But no, I appreciate
so Simon. Simon, sorry, I don't think that was a good answer or direct answer to your question, but something.
No, that's good, man. I will actually have one question that I normally ask every guest that comes on, so I will finish on this one, which is, it's a bit of a trick question because there's no real answer to it because you can't do anything about it. But if you had to go back in your career and do something differently, what would it be?
Okay, that's actually a really good question, and I have a partial answer. And I've always joked that, like, if you think of certain aspects of my career and the music industry, I was like 10 years early, me and several other people, or of course, but you'll get what I'm saying in a second. If you think of music industry, if you think of dance music industry, it was tiny at 2000 or around 2000, and it was huge in 2010 or so, 8, 9, 10, that era. So, and this is completely irrelevant, completely unfounded in a way, but if there was a possibility to have the same kind of success that I had, sort of like hype-wise and whatever-wise, with Sandstorm 99 2000, and transfer that into 2010 and the financials of that era as well, I think I'd be a bit more well off if I had the same success. In, you know, if you know what I mean. That's completely irrelevant. That's just a stupid way of thinking it. But if there was something I could change, that was it, because but that's purely sort of hypothetical and purely actually greedy, I guess. But so that's one.
No, it's good. It's a good point.
But a real one is something like, because of the business was different back then. I had a really great record company in the beginning, or throughout even, but thinking of this topic. And I had a great booking agent, and I didn't feel the need for a manager. And it might be that my career would have been different, better, possibly, maybe more, not lucrative, but maybe I would have done different things and gone to different opportunities if I'd had a shark manager early on, which I didn't have. And the why I didn't was because I had such good partners in the record company and the booking agency, and that I was getting incoming requests for gigs and all kinds of stuff all the time. So there kind of wasn't a need for somebody actively go look for them, and I just didn't realize that myself. But managing up earlier maybe would have been I don't know, maybe would have changed something.
Sure. It's even just a good idea just for the workload of things you've got to do as a producer these days. It's just helpful to have an extra person with a different mind doing those things. So that's a very, very good answer to that question.
Yeah. Hey, I got a thing for you. If you want to, let me see if I can make this work. I didn't try it out early, but if I can, output device, DJM Nexus, and because I could show you this.
Oh, we're getting a sneak preview. Here we go.
And I just need to see if I can find the channels. I'm sorry if this doesn't work.
That's okay. No problem.
Because let's try this from what? Okay, so Logic's still thinking of. There's a lot of plugins on this one, so
no, that's all good.
Let's see.
This one looks pretty well organized.
Yeah, this is my stem.
Nice.
Hold on. Yeah, hold on. I think you should hear something now, right?
Yeah.
Now I realize how much
So I don't actually hear it myself, but I know what it is.
Yeah.
Living the life like no tomorrow. Only tonight we might get lost, but we get lost together. When the sun goes down, we hope it stays down forever. And if they will find us, we just keep on.
So this is Outlaws.
Yeah.
Dancing like we don't give up. We might get lost, but we get lost together. When the sun goes down, we hope it stays
That doesn't have bass.
and if they will find us, just keep on dancing like. 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 A bunch of outlaws.
So that kind of thing.
That lead vocal thing is sick. I love that.
Yeah, I think it's very festive. It's very catchy. It's really emotional for me, but I don't know if people feel the emotion the same way I do, because I literally am thinking about like old gang all together again. Let's go out. Let's have some, like, it doesn't have to be a boys' night out, but kind of thinking, you know, my old buddies, we're all laughing. Everybody's cracking jokes, shitting on each other, all kinds of stuff. You remember that time you did that stupid thing, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, a track drops and we're all going nuts. And it's just, I don't know, everything fell into place with this one. I'm so happy about this track.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
So,
man.
I don't know. Yeah. So very quickly, if you're interested, there's my greens are always effects. That's the, so this is the extended right now. And so the radio edit here is just done cutting out of bits and pieces.
Nice.
Yellow is vocal. So lead vocal. Then there's this kind of vocoder bit that just goes like low rumble, raw, whatever under there. And as you see here, these vocal bits are just added doubles after the fact. I felt like I needed extra delays there between words.
Yes.
Vocoder 2 and 1 are the same vocoder, but there's a little key difference on one couple of spots. So I had it on different channels. These are all the drums all together, and which made it difficult for mixing because a kick is in here as well.
Yes.
And normally I have a kick separate, but because it was all going through the same distortion bus, and the kick is the one that is dictating how the rest of the stuff pumps.
Yeah.
So it was hard to make it pump the same way with the kick out of that like it's just hard to explain even.
Yeah, it's like do you have to use like multi-band or something like that to kind of just target the up a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and here these couple bits are also extra that I don't. I mean, I have them in the main project arrangement, but these are cowbells, just little accent cowbells there.
Got to have them.
Yeah, snare rolls are separate, and there's a extra snare roll in the end as well of this edit. Brown is always bass for me. And then I realized in final moments that I need like actual sub bass. These ones are actually not bass, but they are like the toms that, like the housey toms that dunk, 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 dunk. And if you look at these are heavily sidechained. There's this bit here. Kick comes in here. Yeah. And here. So those work. And then there's just a sub that fills in between here and the kick. Like,
there's always a bass thing happening somewhere, sort of thing.
Yep. And I just learned that when I played it at a club that it's kicking really hard, it's punching, but then there's kind of like energy drop a little, and just a tiny, tiny sub in there between basses. And like it's also sidechain so that, kick starts here. There's a little bit of room for the kick before the sub starts, and so it's this here is the lead sound that comes in. There are a couple of stabs in ends of the rounds.
Yep.
And then there's breakdown with the guitar, and that's basically that.
Beautiful. It's nice to see the work in action.
Yeah, I know it's a little sort of hard to grasp because you haven't heard the full track, the little clip that I played doesn't cover it all, but maybe people can go and check it out, and then come back to the video and see this.
Definitely, and whenever it's out, we'll have a pre-save link of some sort in the show notes, so whoever's watching this back.
Yeah, absolutely, and then if somebody producer-minded is interested, so in my master project, so I normally have my stuff mastered by a pro mastering engineer, but I do this stem mixing and mastering myself because I do gig play all the time.
Yes.
So I master for the gig play, and then I'm a pretty decent mastering engineer these days, but I still want an extra set of ears to actually a pro dude or girl to make the master.
Sure.
But so when I do the mastering, I do like here you can see from version 5 to 6, I added 2 minutes to Waves Vitamin. That actually is not on this. I have now trying out this ozone chain, but I use Waves Vitamin for exciting and widening stuff and narrowing stuff.
Awesome.
And so I just make these notes for myself so I know what I did last time.
Yeah.
Kind of like what I did. Ozone, EQ, 7K shelf +1. So I made it brighter.
It's good.
Whatever. And so it's very practical so that when I come back to this in a year, when I need a new version of something, I know the steps and I can trace them back as well.
That's good. That's a really handy habit to get into for sure.
Yeah. And I name everything, I color code everything, and I'm very sort of meticulous and anal about that. But also when I send stuff to somebody else, they usually thank me for it. Like I don't need the thanks, but I actually get compliments or thanks because it's just like, holy crap, I don't need to use 2 hours to arrange your shit, in a better order first.
That's good. Producers take note for sure.
Yeah. I'll show one more thing, and I know you didn't even ask for any of this, but
I'm loving it.
I'm a nerd about this stuff, so I'll show you one more thing. Where can I find it now? Hold on. Now I'm lost in my own project. There we are. So I don't know if you know this guy, Endless Smile by Data Life.
Yeah.
So towards the end here, well, I could play this part. This intensity, when it goes up, it thins it out, it adds some sort of a reverb to it, and it's used often in my build-ups.
Yeah. Just works.
Yeah, you can see the guy's face changing.
Nice.
And it's hard, you would have to hear the dry and wet like this, but there's it just thins it out. It adds a little bit of that sort of hype towards, but it also, because it thins it out and adds tension, it doesn't lack in volume, but it thins out the low end, and then when the drop hits, it hits full on. I also often have, I think, actually, let's see this. I think there is gain. Yeah, there's gain as well. So I have 1.6 dB difference.
Yes. To just give that drop that extra punch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's 2 dBs, sometimes it's 1 dB, sometimes it's nothing, but it depends on the track, how I just kind of feel the one come in on a drop.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love those little details all add up to make it just
cool.
more impactful. Appreciate you jumping in and opening this up for us. We've got extra blessings today by looking at Darude's project. So appreciate you doing that, man. On that note, we'll wrap this up. But Ville, thank you so much for taking time out today and jumping on. And hope you enjoy the rest of your day, man.
Of course, man. And thank you. I always like to talk tech, talk nerd, talk studio and other shop stuff. So this has been a pleasure for me. And it's not that I don't like other interviews, but especially this kind of thing is easy for me because it's just what I would talk about anyway. So thanks, man.
And real quick, where can people find you online?
Okay, so YouTube and Insta and Facebook are just Darude, and then Twitter is Darudeville, Darude VIL. And then if you want to see me live, come to my gig somewhere sometime. Australia is going to have to wait at least probably half a year. I don't know if I'm going to come back in 23 because I just was there, but hopefully. But then every Friday at 6 p.m. my time, which is various times in Australia, but midnight 1 on the Saturday side. So quite late for you guys, but still, you and your time zones, you have to figure out. But I think Sydney is maybe 1 o'clock.
I think a lot of our listeners are in the US anyway, so I think that works out pretty well for.
And West Coast US is 8 a.m. and East Coast 11 a.m. And that's actually one of the fun things about the stream, where you can catch me live, where you can. I read the chat all the time. I have regulars who I talk to. I have newcomers who I say hi to all the time. So people in America are, with their morning coffees and on their way to work or this and that. And Finland here, people might be making dinner with their kids and everything in between. It's kind of cool how a dance music stream taken out of the club context still reaches people, and still people kind of like it. And that's one of the reasons that I've changed a little bit of my thinking of making music and playing music, because not everything has to have a huge impact like in my normal club set.
Yeah.
But just like the streaming, people are just listening to it as well. So that's been a really cool sort of revelation for me. But there, you can see me, catch me live.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, man. Appreciate it.